Richard Rose, president of the Atlanta NAACP, joined this morning by the leaders of other grassroots organizations who work so hard every day of the year. We worked hard to turn out to vote November 3rd and again on January 5th. And we are all dismayed at the assault on voting rights that we see going on under the Gold Dome just to my right. And so we've gathered this morning to express our outrage. You know, silence gives consent, and we absolutely do not consent to the measures being taken in committee rooms all over this entire Capitol campus in order to take us back to a time where it was so very difficult, so many obstacles, so many barriers, so many discouragements for people of color to exercise their right to vote. The voting franchise is absolutely essential to the American democracy and to the America that we know today. So we'll be bringing up a series of speakers. The first is a lady who I've worked with for maybe a decade on various projects. She represents the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, founded by Dr. Joseph Lowry. Ms. Helen Butler. Helen.
Good morning. I'm saddened that I'm here on such an occasion where voting rights, again, after the 1965 voting rights have been passed, is still under assault. And I want to just give you some numbers to ponder this morning. 71% turnout in November. That's over almost 5 million people voted. 4 million and almost 500,000 voted in 2021 with a 67.3% turnout rate. We just had a poll that has been done by an independent firm called Strategies 360 and Voting Rights Lab, where 74% of Americans believe voters should have the ability to vote absentee ballots, and 52% of those were Republicans. 70% of all voters support no excuse absentee voting. 2/3 support expanding early voting. 90% of respondents in this poll said they voted absentee for the first time without any problems. There have been 500 bills in 37 states to expand voting rights. 165 voting rights. So 57% of those respondents said they opposed any additional ID requirements. 55% were against eliminating drop boxes. 2/3 of the respondents liked the ballot curing process, and they certainly support expanded nights and weekends for early voting. So this trend in Georgia to vote by mail has been increasing since 1996. And blacks are 88% more likely than whites to live in poverty, and Hispanics 91% more likely to live in poverty. And blacks are 58% more likely than whites to not have a computer, and Hispanics 70%. That we had the gold standard for absentee voting. There was no fraud. There were no problems according to them. So what are we doing under the Gold Dome, y'all? We're trying to put barriers to vote by mail by requiring ID, which the poll said the majority of voters are against. We are trying to change the number of days that you can request an absentee ballot, which voters again said they are opposed to any changes. We are trying to do away with drop boxes, except at early voting locations, which people said is not what they want. That they oppose putting drop boxes inside an early voting location because that defeats the purpose of a drop box. So what are we doing here today? Why are they trying to restrict voting when voters in this poll have said they want expanded access? Why aren't we considering vote centers that was introduced by Representative Roger Bruce that would provide more access? Why are we trying to take away automatic voter registration when that is very popular with all voters? Why are we trying to put these barriers in place for additional ID? Again, having to make copies of ID. As the statistics said, a lot of communities of color do not have computers. And if you go to rural Georgia, they don't have broadband access, so dial-up would take you 3 days just to upload one ID. So why are we doing this? Again, for no reason other than to restrict people from exercising their right to vote. We stand here today with all of these groups to say that we don't plan to go back. And as you saw, voters stood in line for hours despite all the problems that they faced with long lines, with machines not working, in the sun, in the rain, in the cold. We plan to exercise our right to vote, and your barriers will not stop us. The young people have shown up. They said, we understand Dr. King's Give Us the Ballot, where he said you must have protest in the street, but you also have to have the ballot. And they exercise that ballot. They're not going to stop. We plan to make sure that every voter can vote. And the people that are trying to turn back the clock, we have a long remembrance as we exercise our right to the polls.
Today that represented here, Georgia Stand Up, New Georgia Project, the 100 Black Men of America, Working Families Party, you heard Helen from Georgia People's Agenda, the Urban League, and did I miss anybody? I think Black Voters Matter. And so each of these organizations represented, each of these organizations put forth a lot of effort to turn these voters out, and we all collectively want to say we refuse to be disrespected. What's next?
Here's that they're trying to take us back. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I had sisters that marched with Dr. King, left high school and marched with Dr. King for the right to vote. And now, 40-some years later, we're back in the same place. The idea is the purpose is to increase fair and free and democratic elections. Why are they trying to take us back? The thing they're trying to change, the laws they're trying to change, those same laws, 3 Republican governors enacted these laws. The motor voter registration, that was enacted by a Republican governor. The no excuse absentee ballots was invoked or voted for by a Republican governor. So all of these laws that they're trying to restrict or suppress us with and take us back was voted by them. No weekend voting restricted. Saturday voting, but no Sunday voting. Voter suppression. I mean, these things that they're trying to do doesn't make sense. They realize that a voteless people is a hopeless people. And the more they try to take us back, the harder we're going to fight. We are going to make sure, and we have to continue to fight, to make sure that everybody has their right to vote. If you're eligible to vote, you should have the right to vote. And the people of Georgia have spoken. It's like the scenario, a sports analogy, or sports analogy is that when the outcome of the vote changed, they decided to move the goalposts. Because the results were not what they wanted. So they want to go back and change that. That's not the way it works. They had a leader, our past president, who taught it and lied and misled the people that it was unfair elections. They debunked that. Even our Secretary of State and Governor declared that that was not true, that it was a fair and free election. But they still try to change it. They want to change the laws so that when they don't win, it's like a sore loser. Lose, then you go back and change the rules. Double standards. We can't have double standards. So my plea is we've got to fight. We've got to still continue to fight. We've got to stand up, and we've got to make our voices heard. Thank you.
Like other organizations, Georgia Stand Up was very instrumental in the voter turnout that we saw both in November and January. Deborah Scott leads that organization. She will come now for a few words.
Stand up and fight back. We're going to stand up and fight back. We're going to stand up and fight back. This is a beautiful day. Look around. We are looking at the state capitol and Martin Luther King. Like the election results of January 5th and January 6th, people were at the Capitol. Somebody didn't like what was happening on January 5th, and January 6th, there was an insurrection. Yes. A lot of those people were here in Georgia, were from Georgia. That's a shame. So Georgia Stand Up stands with this coalition. We will continue to fight back. We will continue to teach our people to fight back. We know this is a former slave state, and we know these constructs of racism taxes. You're saying we have to have IDs. This is not right, and this is America.
Yes.
This is Georgia in 2021. We must stop it. We will continue to strategize, organize, and fight together. Together we will win this fight.
Yes.
The people of Georgia have spoken. They have elected their representatives, and they will continue to elect their representatives. And we will continue to register them. We will continue to get them out to vote. We will continue to fight for them, because this is America. This is America. This is America, and we will stand up and vote.
Greetings, I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, First Vice President of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, and proud to stand with this coalition that has continued to turn out the vote in Georgia for decades. And I must say that I was proud to be a Georgian in November. Yes. And I was proud to be a Georgian in January. Yes. And I am proud to be a Georgian today. Yes. Because we have led the biggest marches in Georgia history. We have led the biggest turnouts in Georgia history. And regardless of what individuals under the Gold Dome think, this is what Georgia looks like. And so we will continue to organize, we will continue to mobilize, we will continue to out-strategize you, because we took the rules that you gave us.
All right.
As our brother just said, 3 Republican governors gave us these rules. And so we just outsmarted you. And so as you continue to try to introduce 76, 77, 78 new proposals, just know this, that there are 7 million voters in Georgia. And when we're done, there are going to be 8 million voters in Georgia. And the complexion of Georgia is changing. The politics in Georgia is changing. And if you don't get on the right side of history, you will be an artifact in Georgia history. You can quote our dear brother John Lewis all day long. But if you aren't doing the work of our dear brother John Lewis, you are just an empty shingle.
All right. All right.
You can place a bust of our dear brother Martin on the corner of the Capitol, but if you are on the inside of the Capitol trying to strip brown and black folks of their rights, you don't even have the gumption to stand near Martin.
All right.
As long as we have Confederate monuments both inside and outside the Capitol, you're showing your true colors. As long as we have the suppressor in chief and his friend, the Secretary of State, we got a real problem. But on this day, we actually agree with both of them. Georgia had the gold standard of voting. Georgia showed the nation what a free and fair election looked like. And, you know, my dad taught me a long time ago that when you lose a fight, you don't just try to change the rules. You become a better fighter. And what y'all don't understand is this. The young people see you. The young people that you were complaining about marching in the streets, well, they took some time off and marched to the polls.
Yes, yes. Woo, woo, woo.
And they're going to start back marching.
Yes.
So in order to have a free and fair democracy, you don't need to build fences around the Capitol. You might just need to do the will of the people.
Yes.
You don't need to erect Jim Crow era voting laws instead of just expanding the franchise and listening to the people.
Yes.
So here is the charge. We're going to have free and fair elections. We're going to mobilize every single Georgia voter that's eligible to vote. Yes. We are not going to allow you to roll us back to 1850 or 1950.
All right.
Because neither of those years were great. So, to quote your former president, whom Georgia sent home, We're going to make America great for the first time by making Georgia great for every son and daughter of Georgia. Not only the ones that were brought over here on tourist boats, but for the ones that were brought over on slave ships. Because my ancestors cried out for justice. And what they saw was this generation. A generation not afraid of tanks, not afraid of state troopers, not afraid of gas. And so when we talk about the civil rights movement, which is its birthplace is in Atlanta, Georgia, I would argue that the social justice movement has a birthplace in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes. And so what we're saying to you, every single one under the sound of my voice, is this. We've marched 65,000, we've marched 85,000, we've marched 15,000, and we marched 5 million to the polls. Yeah. So you can lobby all day long, but there's more power in the people than power in the dollar. All right. So, Governor Kemp, Secretary of State Rafflesberger, and Donald John Trump, listen to the sound of our voice. If you mess with the Georgia election again, you will be going to Jackson. Do I need to say that again? If you mess with the Georgia election again, you will be going to Jackson, because Georgia is a state of laws, and the laws apply to everyone equally. So here is the charge. We're going to fight your repressive voter suppression laws, both in the street, across the street, and in the judicial halls of this state. And we will win. And then we're going to see you again in November. We're going to beat you in November, just like we beat you last November. Thank you to the NAACP. Thank you to Georgia Stand Up. Thank you to the Working People's Party. Thank you to the Queen of Elections, Helen Butler. Thank you to the New Georgia Project. Thank you to the 100 Black Men. Thank you to our friend and fellow warrior in this battle, Stacey Abrams, in fair fight. But more importantly, thank you to the voters, because we've sent a message and we will continue to send a message. Our votes matter because our lives matter. Get your hand off our votes, get your knee off our neck, and don't be chasing us down the street and claiming citizens arrest statutes, because this is a new Georgia whose people are speaking in one voice. We will vote you out. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. I would be remiss if I didn't remind us all that we not only represent Atlanta NAACP, but there were 18 branches across this state, from Lowndes County to Paulding to Clark to Richmond, that banded together and collaborated to turn out to vote not only in the metro Atlanta area, but all over this state. Now we hear from Fallon McClure, who represents Working Family Party. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fallon McClure, and I'm the Organizing and Elections Director for the Working Families Party. I just want to take a moment to say, y'all, we showed up and we showed out. And that's why they're trying to change the rules. The Working Families Party, in collaboration with numerous groups across the state, were out here knocking on doors, phone banking, text banking, making sure that everyone knew that there was an election, knew that there was a runoff, and had a way to get there. Working Families Party knocked on over 200,000 doors across the state in 11 counties. We sent over 7.1 million texts and over 900,000 phone calls. So we've been working. All of these groups have been working for years. This wasn't just some anomaly. It didn't just pop up. Even with the foot of Jim Crow on our necks, we still made sure to find a way to get our voice heard. And now they're trying to take that away. Because they didn't win, they want to change the rules. And we're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to continue to do this work. We're going to continue to fight back. And we're going to continue to be in collaboration with all our friends and partners here. So thank you.
Ariel. Pull that up, Ariel. New Georgia, let me stand up. Keep going. There she is.
Another partner in this was, excuse me, the New Georgia Project Action Fund, represented by Ariel Singleton this morning. Ariel.
Which one of them? Okay. Hi. Quick correction. I am from the New Georgia Project Action Fund, but my name is Tony Watkins, and thank you for having me. The first thing that I would like to say is that for me, sorry, is this better? Can you hear me better now? Yeah. Okay, great. Again, Tony Watkins from the New Georgia Project Action Fund. The first thing that I would like to say is that for me to be standing here in 2021 defending the right to vote that my grandmother was only given when she was 21 years old is disgusting. It is abhorrent. Our democracy is under attack. It is under attack by blatant racists, they are attacks, on black people, on brown people, on poor people, and it is very clear that is who we are attacking. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy, but at every turn, Republicans have voted for bills and advocated for policies that make it harder for those aforementioned people to vote, to exercise their right to vote. Republicans are trying to change the rules of the elections, and that's fine. We play by the rules, including inside of that dome. So that's why we are out here making sure that you know that we are not going to stop fighting. We are not tired, we are not weary, and what I'm not sure that they understand is, as Attorney Grigg said before, we've outsmarted them before, we have outvoted them before, we have outorganized them before, and behind each of my friends behind us, there are hundreds of thousands and millions of people that we have organized to do that before and will continue to do that. We are not called the New Georgia Project Action Fund by accident. There is a New Georgia here, and the New Georgia is voting in the representation that it wants and deserves. And we will continue to do the work regardless of what frivolous laws and rules people try to change after they have lost. You will continue to lose, almost certainly, if that is your strategy. Additionally, 244,059 early in-person voters in the general and runoff election voted on days that the GOP now proposes cutting. That includes Republican voters. 67,135 Georgians registered to vote in the runoff election outside of the window that the GOP now proposes. As currently drafted, House Bill 531 would prevent voter registration for a runoff election after the general election. If such a rule were in place in the runoff election, 67,135 Georgians would not have been eligible to vote in the runoff. Most interestingly to me, 28,120 people applied for absentee ballots in the 11 days before the election. What is interesting about that is that includes our own Governor Brian Kemp. From the words of our own Secretary of State, it is inaccurate to say that there is widespread voter fraud in the state of Georgia. From our own Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, there's no evidence of voter fraud or irregularities in Georgia. Because of their own statements, we know that this is an egregious act of, voter suppression. And we will not stop. We will not deflect. We will not allow people to impugn our right to vote or take it away or scare us. We are not afraid. We're not tired. And there's only more of us. There's more and more of us every day because these things, They are not suppressing our spirit. Just because you're trying to suppress our vote, they are energizing us because we are upset that, again, as I said at the inception of my opening, or at the inception of my speech, in 2021, I'm fighting for something that my grandmother was only given at 21 years old. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And now we'll hear from the real Area Singleton, who represent the Georgia Stand-Up Youth.
Thank you, guys. As he said, my name is Ariel Singleton, and I'm from Georgia Stand Up. But not only that, I am a black youth that votes. Hold on, wait again. I'm a black youth that votes. Because guess what? Black youth vote. And not only that, we stand up. We stood up in Georgia, we went to the polls, and we voted. So just like Attorney Griggs said, we're seeing you. We see you. We marched to the polls. We marched in the streets. But not only that, we know that when we vote, it works. Because if it didn't work, we wouldn't be right here today. See, because it worked a little too well, now we got to shift a little things around. When it works too well, now we have to shift a little things around. So we had absentee voting that happened that was helping us out because we may have been in school in other states. But now we're trying to take that away from us. The mobile voting, we're trying to take that away from us. That's things that work a little too well, so now we got to go back and try to take it back. 55 years ago, we had my ancestors fighting for the same thing that I'm sitting here trying to fight for now. Trying to keep what they had, that they fought in their streets, that they were marching in the streets, bloodshed in the streets for now. See, when I fall, I want to fall forward, because that means that we're not going to go back to 1965 when you did the first Voting Rights Act. We're going to sit right here, and we're going to sit. It don't care if we have to sit on these steps, stand out here in Liberty Plaza every day until you do what needs to be done and stop trying to suppress our people. If it wasn't powerful, it would be nothing for you to take. And you know that it works. So right now I want to give a charge, since we're in Black History Month. You know when it says stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod? See, we're going to march on until victory is won. We're going to march on in these streets until you stop killing us. We'll keep marching on in these streets until you stop arresting us for senseless things. We'll keep marching to the polls until we can vote. See, when we were out here, you were fighting us because we weren't doing it the right way. But when we're going to march the right way to the polls and put our names on papers and put our thoughts on papers, and we're going to march on to the judicial court and march on to watching you do what needs to be done. So when I say Georgia, you say stand up, Georgia. When I say black youth, you say vote black youth. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to stand up and I want you to go vote. Thank you very much.
All of us assembled here believe that in the principle that all men and women are created equal. We believe that we all are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What we see is that the leadership of Georgia's legislature is intent on creating obstacles to participation in the voting franchise. Instead of focusing on solutions for non-existent problems in our system of voting, Georgia's legislature should be working to ensure that every child in Georgia, no matter what race, creed, national origin, should receive a free, quality education no matter which of the 159 counties they live in. The legislature should be working to ensure that funding for education is never cut, no matter the economic or pandemic conditions. They should be working to build an education system that will overcome the limitations of poverty for city dwellers and their country cousins. They should be working to make equal justice a reality instead of a lofty ideal. They should be working to change an horrendously flawed system of public safety that continues to allow high school graduates to issue drive-up death sentences. They should be working together to repair the damaged communities, shattered dreams, and generational traumatic stress caused by presumed unsuitability, presumed ignorance, presumed dishonesty, all of which define racism. What should have ended 156 years ago is alive and well in Georgia, demonstrated by new legislation that declared that the Confederacy should be preserved not only at Stone Mountain, the largest shrine to white supremacy in the history of the world, but also at the Georgia Department of Administrative Services and the Department of Transportation, where black-owned businesses are effectively and efficiently barred from contract opportunities. Less than 2% of state contracts go to black-owned businesses in a state where blacks are about a third of the population. That means that millions of contract dollars do not find their way to black communities and black families. Racism is a sin that seems to be worshipped under the gold dome. It is manifested in denial, in symbolism, in claims of heritage, and in the obstacles being placed to prevent or discourage citizens from exercising their fundamental right to participate in democracy. We refuse to be mistreated. We refuse to sit on the back of the bus of prosperity. We refuse to be relegated to the back door of vaccine delivery. We refuse to be branded as not having integrity because we dared to vote in numbers in November and January. And we refuse to be undermined by some black legislators who are willing to accept white supremacy in exchange for pieces of silver and personal recognition. We refuse to be mistreated. We refuse to be mistreated. We'll take any questions that you might have of anybody that's assembled here.
Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? We continue to be strong and committed. As speakers have said, we understand what we're faced with. Voter suppression has been going on since 1868, right after the 15th Amendment was passed. So we recognize what the mission must be, and we are all dedicated to that mission.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And as we said so eloquently, we will continue to march on. There is a virtual march which will be happening digitally on the 27th, starting at 11 a.m. You can find the information on the Atlanta NAACP Facebook group. There will also be other protests that are planned. So just stay connected with the Atlanta NAACP and all the partners here, and we will make sure we keep you up to date, as crossover day is somewhere between March the 1st and March the 3rd. And then, of course, we will probably assemble here on the last day, sign it, die, to make sure that these bills die. Thank you.
Thank you for your presence. Thank you for covering this very important statement that we need to make, and the work continues. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Get together for a group photo.
Group photo.
How you doing? I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, first Vice President of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP. You've heard the history, the illustrious history of Atlanta, whether it was Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., whether it was John Dale Johnson, whether it was... Well, now you can be a part of making that next step in history by joining the Atlanta NAACP, because we are on the forefront of movement. We've been on the forefront of movement for 100 years, and we will change the shape of this city. So join us, our legacy of civil rights and the future of social justice. Join the Atlanta NAACP. We need you to be a part of the change.
One more right here. Keep smiling. Thank you.
something about that.
Can y'all stay there?